Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back here. And today we have another, I guess you could say, video game, video essay, or you guess you could call it a very late review if you really wanted to. But we're going to be talking about the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim today, and why I personally think it's the best game of all time, and why at least it's my favorite game of all time. And I know, my personal opinion might not carry much weight with really anybody on the internet, obviously, but I just wanted to why it's such a good game, why it's, in my opinion, the best game of all time, and it's a tricky thing to kind of quantify. What is the best game of all time? What metrics do you put into it? And on top of that, there's so many different genres. There's RPGs, there's open world action adventure exploration games like this. There's card games, there's shooters game, there's sports games, there's racing games. There's fucking MMOs. There's a million different types of genres, different types of games. There's new games coming out all the time. So, greatest game of all time. How long does that actually hold up? There's a lot of stuff to consider here, but in my opinion, kind of in my mind, what makes Skyrim so great in my mind through all the years, through all the different ports and the million different fucking releases. It's through all the different bugs and imperfections that the game definitely has, and glitches you can exploit, and all of its I guess you could call it imperfections. What makes this game, because polish wise, it's definitely not the best game of all time. Graphics wise, especially due to its age, it's definitely not the best game of all time. It's not the longest game, it's not the shortest game, it's not the prettiest game, it's not the best, really, at particularly one thing. You could argue maybe a couple of things we'll get into, but overall, it doesn't really stand out, in a ton of different ways. What makes it such a fantastic video game? And that to me is kind of a combination of like a million different factors that all play in the Skyrim here and make it such a fantastic piece of art. And we'll get into that in a second. First and foremost, though, I just want to say something that really stuck in my mind when I was, pondering this question in my head and trying to kind of figure out where to go with this. Skyrim is just, they have a saying, the jack of all trades is a master of none. Well, that seems to not apply when it comes to Skyrim. It's a jack of all trades and at least a master of most, even if it doesn't get everything perfect. I think the big thing here is not only the story of Skyrim, because obviously it's an RPG game, but it's the world. Nothing quite compares. There's very few games, at least, that compare to the worlds of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. And everybody likes to joke about the glitches, the stupid NPCs, and the overly repetitive memes and kind of guard catchphrases, the annoying guys like Nazim, stuff like that. It's not perfectly polished in any meaningful way there, but it doesn't have to be. You know, the world just feels so fleshed out, so deep, so alive that you can forgive, when some shithead like guard drops the same arrow in the knee line for the thousandth time in your 80th playthrough. There's so much depth to it that it doesn't. There's so many different regions. The NPCs, while goofy, I think that adds to. I think a lot of those slight imperfections kind of add to the charm of Skyrim. Beyond that, getting into the meat of the bones and bones of the game itself, the story. The story is fantastic. Obviously, there's a lot of lore in the Elder Scrolls at large. Even beyond the whole fucking it's just Skyrim and just the Skyrim main quest. There's obviously four other Elder Scrolls and hopefully a sixth soon, and there's a whole bunch of lore outside of that even. So it's definitely very rich when it comes to that. But again, part of it is a sandbox ideology where, like I talked in other games, Skyrim is stuffed full of content and quests and things to see and things to do. But unlike, like I talked about in one of my old episodes with the whole arrow in the knee bullshit, or not in with the Assassin's Creed, Jesus, the Assassin's Creed bullshit, where it stuffs it full of content just for content's sake, so just to present barricades for you to get through. Skyrim, none of that extra stuffed in content feels necessary. It doesn't feel forced upon you. It doesn't feel tedious in any way. It feels like an adventure that you're unfolding and discovering as you go across the world, as you meet new people, as you take on new quests and new areas and travel to different regions. Feels like you're unfolding new parts of a book and getting to that next chapter rather than I need to burn through this fucking chapter to get to the next chapter that I actually want to play at. So how they do it is a big part of how they sprinkle out the content is a big part of it, and the content itself is just legendary. The locations, Skyrim is beautiful, obviously, very varied in locations, and on top of that, it's fantastic in a way that the quests themselves are some of the most legendary in video game history. I mean, you have obviously the main storyline, but you have a lot of overarching, very important side quest storylines to the point where the main storyline can almost get overshadowed. You have the Thieves Guild, you have the Companions, you have the Dark Brotherhood, you have the Mages College, you have fucking the Bards College for what you want to consider that. You have the Civil War quest line, and there's no order to do these things. And again, is another thing I think is really important. There's no forced intentions here by Skyrim. Say, oh, you need to do this to do that, actually, or you have to do this first to do that. There's some interesting, ways, especially with the Civil War. If you haven't done there is a couple caveats, but overall, it's not forced at all. It's not pressed upon you. You unfold the book and turn the next page at your own pace, and because you want to, not because you have to. And it's just it's so great. I mean, and getting into the actual gameplay mechanics of it, there's so many different builds, so many different classes you can try out, so many different things you can experiment with. The replay value of the builds on their own, as well as adding in the differences you can make in quest and quest lines and choosing vampires or vampire hunter, or not to do certain quest lines or stormcloaks or the imperial, and the empire. It's just there's so much replay value in it. There's so many different choices to make. I think that's what keeps people coming back, obviously, through the years is the replay value. But on top of that, it's so fun. It's such a good game that you can almost say that Skyrim, at least for me, for a long time, kind of ruined the entire genre and a lot of other video games that came out after it. Because outside of The Witcher 3, which is the only game in my mind in the same genre, anyways, that has really challenged my love and my spot on the top of the pyramid for Skyrim, it just ruined a lot of other games. Like Fallout was okay, but it was kind of difficult to get through a lot of some of the games in the series. Don't even get me started about Outer Worlds. Greedfall, another minor title you might even. I'm just listing off random RPGs that I can spit off out the top of my head, but you get the point. It's so good that it kind of set the bar so high so early for that in my gaming life, obviously, that it ruined a lot of games after me or after it for me. And I understand that if you're younger and you haven't gone through that, it's hard to go back to games. I'm the same way with people who say Oblivion or Morrowind is better. It's kind of, especially Morrowind was a bit before my time, and I don't understand it as much necessarily. It's hard for me to go back to, but I understand if you were in the moment that plays a part for sure. But it's so fantastic. The world feels alive. The gameplay is great, and it's it's simplistic. It doesn't do too much, and it doesn't need to. Obviously the combat mechanics have gotten a lot more sophisticated as the years have gone on. Skyrim's mechanics are about as bare bones combat wise as you can physically get in a video game like this. It's not The Witcher, it's not the Elden Rings and Dark Souls with its parrying and rolling and its intricate systems. It's not Kingdom Come Deliverance and it's very complicated, kind of realistic battle simulations. It's literally just hacking and fucking slashing, or burning people alive with mystical spells. It's very simplistic, but the combat and that never makes it, never depletes it, never makes it feel bad. It never depletes or takes away from the game in any way, in my opinion, or the experience, in my opinion. Because that's not the main focus. You're interested with the very intricate storylines, which is beyond the main storyline. You get invested in the people, the world that you care about, anyways, into the side quests and side storylines, even simplistic stuff. Not like a guild or like a Civil War quest line. You get involved with that I just noticed you can see me clip farming in this throughout this entire B-roll, but you get you get fucking involved with this world and you start to care. That's a big thing. Wanting to do something versus being forced to or told to do something in a video game to me makes a huge difference. And I think that's where Skyrim and a lot of sandbox type games like this really shine, in my opinion, because you can really just do so much with them. On top of that, it's such a beautiful lore. The world itself, as I mentioned a couple times already, it's just alive. I mean, it's simply fantastic. I love all the storylines in here. This is a game with infinite replay value that I can come back and experience in multiple different ways on multiple different platforms, and never feel bored with it. The infinite amount of decisions and builds you can make. Builds, obviously, but even decisions. As I mentioned, do you want to go with the Stormcloaks? Do you want to go with the Empire? Do you want to be a vampire? Do you want to be a vampire hunter? And stuff like that. I just ragdoll. Forgot about that. But it's so great. It's infinite replay value. It doesn't feel tedious at all. Are there fetch quests throughout Skyrim? Of course. There's some things that damn there just aren't worth your time. They give you 50 gold to go risk your life in a cave to withdraw their family sword or some bullshit like that. But you don't have to do that. There's no need to do that. There's no incentive whatsoever to do that outside of you either wanting the reward or you wanting to do it in general. I went to Stormcloaks this time. Doing an illusion build on this playthrough, by the way. If you've never done illusion, that's super fun to do. You can really fuck with people and kind of do that in a fun, different little way there. But getting back on the topic here, it's just yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. I really enjoy experimenting with all that stuff and doing all that stuff. It's a perfect world. And you might be saying I've repeated a couple different things and like I've had very overarching themes here. Other games have this, don't they? Well, it's like, do they really? Like I mentioned The Witcher 3. I love it. The world is alive. It has the world building aspects. It has honestly better visuals. It has just as good, if not a better, honestly, overarching main storyline, with really interesting side stories as well. But the thing that The Witcher 3 doesn't have in my play is obviously replayability. I've never felt the need or urge to replay The Witcher 3 because there's not a lot of decisions, or there's decisions you can make, but there's not a lot of, extra content that you can choose to do differently. It's like who do you want to date or who do you want to fuck, basically, in the virtual world of like baddie Witcher girls or some bullshit, right? So there's minuscule things you can choose to do differently, but there's not a lot of replay value. There's not a lot of variance. It's not very sandboxy or free flowing. It's very linear, kind of locked in story, but the story itself is so good that you don't really mind. So there's some key differences there that I think hold it back a little bit in my mind, anyways, from being there. And I just, I think that's the big difference of a lot of games is they probably have some of these pieces. They probably have some of these pieces done better, if anything, like the combat, like the visuals, stuff like that, like the maybe even the story. But it's a combination of every factor of an open world like RPG game that Skyrim just does all around on average better than everybody. That I think really makes it shine, and why I think it's such a legendary video game. I'm really hoping the Elder Scrolls 6, by the way, comes out soon and it doesn't suck ass because I will pre-order that. I will buy it unless there's some catastrophic news that comes out before it because of how much I love this game and how much I respect the studio and the game series as a whole. They have never messed with the Elder Scrolls, but of course they haven't released an Elder Scrolls in like fucking forever, so it is what it is. But I hope that's good. But yeah, I mean, it's great. I could sit here for 20 million fucking hours just rambling on sometimes about the same thing about why I think Skyrim is so good. Another thing we kind of just saw there, there's a lot of different variances and even the cosmetic and like artificial stuff, like the skill system. Again, it's part of the reason why it's so easy to make a million different builds and to experiment so much and to have replay value is because the skills are beautifully laid out as you level up. There's no class archetype that you choose at the beginning of the game. Kind of forge your own path and your own strengths and weaknesses and what you want to experiment there's a million different armor sets, and light versus heavy, or like basically just clothes if you're wearing robes as a mage like me. There's different enchantments, there's different alchemy potions you can fuck with. There's different builds, whether you want to be an archer, a stealthy guy with a dagger, a two-handed or shield and sword and board warrior with heavy armor. There's mages, obviously. There's a million different spells you can master in different schools of magic. There's a million different weapons and axes and swords and different types of weapons classes for you to use and master and pick up. And there's a million different collectibles and interesting one-off, unique like swords and maces and warhammers and shit like that. It makes it feel so fresh every time you explore the worlds. It's almost hard to stay with the build because you find such cool shit just almost on accident sometimes. Even when you're not playing one of the main quests or the main side quest, you stumble into a cave and you stumble upon this really cool relic or these really cool enemies. You get a good reward, or you unlock a new storyline or minor quest line that you really want to follow. Adventure is really just around every corner in Skyrim. That's part of the reason that keeps you playing. You never know what you'll find. You want to explore, even if it has no meaning. You're just running around in like fucking Falkreath's, area. I know the Dark Brotherhood's there, so you might stumble upon some shit. But at least initially, obviously, no spoilers, but it is what it is. That all of that just there's a million different armor types as well as sets you can make. You can build a fucking house in different regions of the area, regions of Skyrim. It's so I guess it's kind of a sandbox creative game in that way. But there's just a million things to do, and none of it feels tedious. None of it feels overwhelming whatsoever, and you want to do all of it. That's why I think Skyrim is such a good game, and why I think, in my opinion, it's the best game of all time. All those factors that I've been talking about throughout the video added up to make, in my opinion, the perfect video game, at least for me. But yeah, that's kind of it. I'm gonna stop rambling now. I could do this all day, and I'd bore you and myself eventually. But I just want to cut it short here. I know it wasn't the most well articulated and formulated video of all time. It was more just like an off the cuff rambling. But that came straight from the heart. That's my actual thoughts on the matter. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of the video and my opinions. I'd love to hear what you guys think about Skyrim in general, because I'm sure as hell after seeing some of the comments on these recent videos too. If I use the title of this video, I think I'm going to. I'm definitely getting some hate comments probably about Bethesda haters, about Skyrim haters, and a million different things that are wrong with the game, or why I'm an idiot for thinking this and everything. And I'm looking forward to the positive and negative comments on the video and what you guys think about Skyrim, my video in general. But yeah, that'll do it. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and the content on the channel really helps, and everything as well as your view is really appreciated, of course. And yeah, hope you all have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.